This is the Working in Hell podcast with your host, Vinny Blasio. Each episode, Vinny takes you inside the world of New York State corrections, focusing on both corrections officer and law enforcement issues. And now your host, Vinny Blasio.
Good day, everyone. My name is Vinny Blasio, and welcome to another episode of the Working in Hell podcast. Each month, or it used to be each week, we try to bring you in to speak about the law enforcement issues affecting predominantly the area of New York State corrections, but we do talk about other issues as well. So this is episode 29, and we're going to have a special co-host because we have a special guest that I can't say that she's a special guest anymore since she's been here more than once. So we'll call her a co-host for this point going forward. So I want to wish everyone Merry Christmas. This is the holiday edition. Happy Hanukkah and Happy New Year to everyone. So as we get with the holidays, we know that especially in law enforcement, it brings on a special issues and onset of personal issues, especially for those that are in corrections, because the holidays come and those working, especially now more than ever in docks, we see a problem with time off and spending those time with the holidays. So again, happy holidays to everyone. And as we've seen from if you've been following along on the Facebook Vinny News, you've seen that we just got the New York State fact sheet for the month of December. So with that, especially when we're looking at staffing, DOCCS actually lost officers for the month of December. So DOCCS is talking about how they're going forward with this big recruitment campaign. There's a couple academies going, so hopefully recruitment does pick up so people can get time off. But with the new laws that have recently passed, and we'll get into that in a minute, I don't see how recruitment is going to pick up. I see things actually getting worse instead of better, but that's my own personal opinion. But as a DOCCS fact sheet, they gained 4 lieutenant positions. They gained 49 sergeant positions, and they lost 87 officers from November 1st to December 1st. So that's a net loss of 87. The assaults on staff increased by 129. The inmate-on-inmate assaults increased to 234. So we're looking at some serious issues. Inmate deaths increased for the month by an increase of 7 deaths. So we see some problems. So recruiting is still an issue. We'll get into some of that shortly. Closing prisons, obviously that doesn't help. It doesn't help the morale, doesn't help staffing, as Doc's saying that that's going to help staffing. But as we can see that every time a prison's closed, it really hasn't helped much. But it also takes a toll on morale and mental health. And we'll get into that in a minute too. And you see that the conditions that those that are working are actually worse today than they were last week, than they were last month. So everything with all this to mind, it has an effect. It affects the mind, body, and soul of the employees, not just officers, but civilian staff as well. Morale now, especially after Governor Kathy Hochul passed the prison omnibus bill last night, it's sure to create more chaos, and in my opinion, will be the final blow and death knell on the department. As I've stated over and over, almost every episode, you cannot have the people that created the problem solve the problem. And this is just going to be exacerbated by the New York State legislator basically running DOCCS now and the governor. And the management of DOCCS, we could all debate whether they're doing a good job or not. But you see the problems that have happened pre-strike, during strike, and obviously post-strike, and the conditions are worse now than ever. And we see a department that's being run by the New York State legislator. That is a recipe for disaster, and we see how that has been working, or should I say not working. And we've seen in the recent article that I recently posted that was written by an inmate, believe it or not, that even the inmates think the reforms have gone too far. Their words, not mine. But I concur. The New York legislator or some, they are trying to define you. They're trying to paint everyone with the same brush, saying that everybody is a bad actor and that basically you cannot do the job on your own. You need 100% oversight. And we know that the negative media attention plays right into that. So you're being defined by the New York State legislator, basically. And that's a recipe, as I said, for disaster. The negative media attention, there's been really no pushback on that. So the narrative has already been defined, sadly, that there's no pushback for these advocacy groups. There's no pushback on demoralizing and demeaning the officers, painting them all with the same brush for the Marcy and mid-state incidents and what have you. And let's be honest, that there's a lot of BS that was going around with these inmate lawsuits. They're going to capitalize more now than ever with some of these bogus and frivolous lawsuits. So again, do not let the New York State legislator define you. You know the type of worker you are, the type of person that you are, and I know that can have a negative effect, especially mentally, going in and all you're hearing is negativity and living in a negative environment to begin with. And here we are in the holiday season. You know, the holidays are rough. DOCCS puts out memo after memo on how rough it is for the incarcerated, but they forget on the toll that it takes on the officers, especially now when we're talking about mandates more than ever. There's no staffing, so that means more people are going to be able to spend the holidays inside prison and not with the family. So that has a very negative effect, especially on all staff. And we're here to talk about just that. I know nobody trusts DOCCS, and we're going to get into that. I totally get it. They have put out a wellness app. We've seen a lot of negative comments. Nobody trusts DOCCS. You know, I've read your emails. I see your messages. So keep those coming. I hear you. You know, nobody wants to go to their employer who they absolutely despise and do not trust. And trust is a big issue. And let's get into that. You know, we are here to help anytime, day or night. So if you have an issue, let us know and we'll get you the help you need, or be able to give you some resources on where to turn. And also, let's hit that like and subscribe button. For those that are watching on your different platforms, make sure that you hit the like. That helps us. It helps spread the message and helps those algorithms get going. So without further ado, let's get into our special guest and let's hear the... Hi, Jillian.
Hi.
So back again. So just for those that may have missed the last episode, if you could just introduce yourself a little bit and give a little background quickly before we jump into the very important topic that we have for this episode.
So I'm Jillian. I'm a licensed therapist in private practice in New York State. I primarily work with first responders. I also treat men and people with addictions and anybody else who kind of moseys on into the office. But for the most part, I'm primarily working with first responders now, correction officers, police officers, firefighters, EMS, dispatch, all that kind of stuff. So that's what I do.
Well, it's great to have you. I'm glad that you came back from another episode, and we wanted to really make sure that, you know, there was so much feedback that I received after your last appearance. So as I said earlier, you know, we can't call you a special guest anymore. You're now a co-host because this is your second time, and the feedback was unbelievable. People wanted your email, and you know, we want to be able to turn people, and I appreciate that are struggling or just have questions in general, and be able to return to you. You were a great resource. You're a great help, and then obviously from the feedback received after the last episode, I'm not the only one that feels that way.
Yay!
Yay!
I'm going to watch my face today. I'm not going to.
No! Don't watch it, because the facial expressions say it all. I mean, it gives the real appearance. Nothing that we do is scripted. So it's totally live and off the cuff, and I appreciate that. So no, don't watch the facial expressions. I always go back afterwards, and I enjoy watching that. But we, just like I said in the opening remarks about the way that morale is right now, that new laws are passed almost daily, it seems, sometime hourly. But DOCCS has come out with the new wellness app. I think they were listening to some of the things that we had said last episode. Now you had mentioned a great idea that I didn't think of, but I liked, about putting resources in each facility. They're kind of having a hub aspect of it. But the wellness app was not very well received from DOCCS. And one of the reasons, as far as the feedback that I'm getting, and I really need your opinion on, is there's really no trust in docs. They don't trust their employer. So if you could kind of help me with that, what are your feelings on that?
Yeah, I mean, the job is hard enough as it is. And I think I touched upon it last time, the idea of one of the big traumas that any first responder group can struggle with, and it is a traumatic thing because it's not expected, is the idea that your administration doesn't support you. And so I think like the mental health hub thing is actually, again, fantastic in theory, but in practice, the staff doesn't trust their employer. And like you said, the memos are coming out about like the inmates and all that stuff. And okay, but like even the language that's used, you've got certain legislators advocating only for inmates and not for the staff. And I think I'd commented a couple times on your posts about like if Salazar and the crime victim person, right, really wants to affect change in this system, she should be talking to at the ground level staff that's actually doing it instead of calling all of you racist pieces of shit. Like that's what she should be doing, because then people would be more willing to work with her and maybe affect the changes that she's looking forward to. Like that's my opinion. Like you always want to talk to the people actually doing the thing instead of insulting them on the regular. And then the fact that, the governor and the commissioner kind of piggyback those sentiments. Why would anybody go to their employer if they're struggling with something and ask for support, or trust that the support that they're being given doesn't come with a cost on the back end? Like it's messed up.
It really is messed up, and they don't trust their employer at all. They don't trust to keep whatever that they say confidential. They don't trust that the outcomes, that they're not going to be penalized in a different way. And the circumstances are not the same. I retired. We're going to be coming up on 6 years for me. So the work environment is not the same today for those folks that are working than it was for me, 6 years ago. I left because I saw the direction of how shitty it is. But now we're talking about not only a daily, it used to be assaults. Now we're talking about increased exposure rates. Someone just got exposed at the facility last night. Was their second time being exposed in a year. That takes a tremendous amount of demoralization of the mind, especially to that person's family. It's like, I got a phone call, meaning that I'm the spouse. I got a phone call the second time in a year that, my significant other has been exposed to something. I just can't imagine the trauma that goes with that. Now we couple it with, almost every single facility, not all, but I would say the majority have just put out memos taking away personal time, vacation time. So what does time off do to the officers and the staff that just can't get time off on a regular basis?
Not having that vacation time actually exacerbates people's mental health issues and physical health issues. So like burnout, right? That's a thing that's real. Compassion fatigue, that's a thing that's real that people deal with on the regular. And then if you don't have adequate time off in between to like take care of your family, do the things that you need to do around the house, even to just like rest, it can cause significant health issues, right? So trauma, there's a book called The Body Keeps Score. And in it, they talk about the fact that like trauma over time, complex trauma, things like that, cause people to have physical health issues like high blood pressure, gastrointestinal issues, cardiac issues, poor sleep, right? I said cardiac already. Sorry. I'm going through the body systems.
That's fine.
In my mind. But like, and then on top of that, so like you're not getting good sleep, your mental health is shit. And then you're going to go to work and you're expected to conduct yourself like with any kind of, you're tired and exhausted and stressed out. And then you're supposed, oh yeah. At some point there's a breaking point, and it seems to be happening more and more. On top of the fact that like every day these people are going into work, continuous exposures to trauma, continuous exposures to the drugs that are being brought. Like it's like people need the time off to decompress so that they can be better employees. Bottom line, that's what the research says, and that's a fact. I didn't make that up.
No, I would never accuse you of that. And for those that don't know, Jillian didn't mention it, but you've also worked in the correctional facility setting. So this is not anything that we're talking about. You can speak from experience on both ends because you've worked in correctional facilities, not just one. and had a career in docs. You left to go on to greener pastures, but so you have a vast experience in most of what we're seeing. So PTSD is not, something that's overlooked. And I would think that even now it's more of a problem than ever. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah. Like I was looking at doing some research before our chat, and the average life expectancy for a correction officer is 59, which is really scary because it's 16 years shorter than somebody in the general public because of the intense trauma and the physical stuff. I mean, people are dying left and right 2-3 years out of retirement because of all of the stress on the body and the mind. And it's actually really sad. I like to call it too, like cumulative career stress, traumatic stress. So CCTS, as opposed to post-traumatic stress disorder. I feel like that's a better descriptor for what correction officers and first responders in general experience is cumulative career traumatic stress. Just because somebody's seen,
because I have to keep notes because you learn something new all the time. I'm sorry.
But like who want, like if somebody's like, you have PTSD, and it's like it's one of those things that like people overuse now. It's like, oh, I didn't get the milk I wanted at Starbucks, I have PTSD. The fuck you do. Like you don't. People that are experiencing this kind of stuff on a daily basis continuously, that's where the traumatic stress is. And just because you've seen really messed up things doesn't mean you develop full criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder. Because like what I think about like newer people that I've worked with, when they see things, their response to things is a little bit different than somebody who's a seasoned veteran, somebody who's been there longer, who's kind of like, oh, okay, whatever, and just kind of going through it. The fact that you can be desensitized to things that are really horrifying, that's it. That's it.
Yeah, and that's real. Because people in the street, when you tell them and you're like, you're not bothered by it, and you don't even think anything of it because you've seen it more than once, like now it's become second nature. It's like, okay. And when I see my first death of an incarcerated, and it was like, okay, yeah, that has an effect on you. But then the second, time that happens, it's like, okay, I've learned, whether I handled it right or not is a different story, but I've learned what my coping mechanism was because I've already experienced once. And when it happens again, it's like, okay. But that brings on a whole onset of factors in itself. I mean, I know that, there's a lot of depression that's out there. There's, what brings us to this episode, and I like to hit on it at least once a year because the suicide rate, the depression, is real for officers. It's real for law enforcement. But, from the last couple of episodes that I've done, that I've learned from different people, including you, is that the rates seem to be much higher in correction.
And I think there's a lot of factors that go into that specifically. And maybe I don't even want to say it's just New York corrections. I think it's corrections in general, right? Like people forget sometimes that y'all are also first responders. You're technically like law enforcement. You're technically like, you have fire brigades, you have fire safety officers. So like if there's a fire in a cell or in a dorm, you also are firefighters. Not to mention the fact that if there is an inmate who is hurt, a lot of officers are going in almost as EMTs to provide emergency medical treatment until the hospital or the nursing staff can come. So like that's, and on top of that, you're locked in for 8, 16, 24, 48 years for some of you.
Right.
Like in with like people that are not nice to you. So like even the, with the legislation that just came out with like cameras all over the place, I'm wondering if the public is going to see inmates screaming at staff, like, because there's going to be no repercussions for it. So like, okay, show all the bad stuff that happens, but please also show, what the staff is subjected to on a daily basis. That's going to cause people to feel some type of way over a period of time.
And that has happened, or the point has been raised when docs, New York State docs recently, or I don't say recently, but when they first developed the static cameras, that was one of the things that was made, was that, we're not going to use this to discipline staff or, for, mundane, stupid things. It's going to be used for serious incidents, and it's going to be used for, to disprove the inmates' claims. And it's going to be used to show what the inmates are saying, just like you said, that, they're not very nice to staff, or the things that they say or do. But that never happened. And I don't have any confidence that these body-worn cameras, the videos from that, are not going to be shown, because I think if you took body-worn cameras outside the incidences of the ones that are always making the news, or those lawsuits that are claimed, it doesn't, there's no evidence to show it the opposite way, because the facility doesn't release those videos. And I think that if they released every single video, the general public would be, holy shit, they're right, that this is happening way more, and the general public doesn't know that. So your point is well taken on that. I just, I don't know what the answer is going to be long term. I'm not a proponent. I'm not, I'm different as far as body worn cameras, but if it's any direction that the static cameras, and they're adding even more to those, it only emboldened the inmates. And I just don't see how it's going to be used fairly. And that's something that body worn cameras, static cameras, that's a direct negotiations that have to be done with the union. I don't believe that was the case. Maybe the union signed off on it. I don't have any knowledge of that. But that's something that the unions and the employee organizations, for all, whether it be CSEA, PEF, the Corrections Union, Council 82, whoever it be, that's something that's a mandatory subject negotiations and should be gone over with them. But back to your point, I mean, as far as the PTSD, you touched on that, the depression, what would you think as far as the rates on some of these, as opposed to the general population and the suicide risk?
So doing a little bit of research, so I had solid numbers to talk the talk.
You always do.
What I had seen was like between 19 and 34% of correctional officers suffer from symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, as compared to 6.8% of the general population, right? Over 25% of correction officers suffer from depression. Suicide risk, 39% higher than the average for all other occupations.
What was that
and
number?
Then there's
39?
39% higher. Yep. For correction officers. Yep. So like, this is, again, these are not numbers that, are actually easy to say. I'm smiling because I'm just talking, but like, that's really sad. Like, that's really sad. And it could be better. It could be better if officers were treated a little bit better and they had better working conditions to be able to do the job that they want to do.
Well,
and support.
And that's the thing, support. And, going back to a study that I did from Cornell, when I was doing my labor relations study, I went back and looked at the 79 strike of corrections. Who knew that when I was doing that, 15 years ago, that fast forward, there would be a strike in 2025. But be that as it may, one of the conditions that came out of the strike was that people, the employees, predominantly the officers, were losing their cool. They were losing it because the inmates had more rights, or at least they felt that the inmates had more rights than the officers. The recent events, I'm not going to get into my personal opinion of the Marcy and Marcy and Mid-State incidents, but I'm not condoning that by any stretch of the imagination. But I can see where people take matters into their own hands because they see an environment where nothing is happening. I just can't imagine, when I left, it was deteriorating where there were no repercussions for inmates, because I was a disciplinary lieutenant and I could no longer give out sanctions anymore. And then when we did, we had to write a whole thesis on the reasons why and the mitigating circumstances, blah, blah, blah. But, I could see where people working in an environment being mandated no time off could actually start losing their cool. Is that a condition of the byproduct, I should say, of the working condition?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So like, again, it's one of those things, like, you go into this line of work for a number of reasons, right? And I think there's this misconception about, like, you have to be hard, you have to be tough, right? And you have to be able to, like, not have any emotion, not have any empathy and things like that. And when people lose their empathy and they lose their capacity to do that, it's not necessarily even a sign of weakness or a moral failure. It's something that actually takes its toll, like I was talking about earlier. Like, when you start to compartmentalize what you're seeing and dealing with on a regular basis, people, it's not that you're dehumanizing anybody, but it's almost like you don't want to get taken advantage of. And the mental effort that it takes to be this hardened person all the time translates not only to your work performance, but also your home performance and like what you're doing there. So I think it's when people are stressed out and burnt out, their critical thinking skills aren't where they should be. So somebody who might be a really solid officer with de-escalation skills, exhausted, overwhelmed, stressed out, doesn't feel supported. When our brains are actually in that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode, right? The frontal cortex, that part of your brain actually shuts down. So logic, reason, emotion regulation goes right out the window, and you're doing what you need to do because you think you need to survive. And that is something that is it's overlooked when we're talking about that. So if you give officers, right, actual coping skills, actual tools, or they have a safe place to vent what's going on, their ability to stop and think about things is going to be greater than it is if they're feeling completely like stressed out.
And who wouldn't be stressed out in today's conditions? I mean,
everybody's stressed out.
Right. And I mean,
the inmates are stressed out too.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
they're seeing what's going on. These are not stupid people. Like I said that in the last one, some of them are extremely intelligent. And if they got out of their own ways, they would be brilliant and unstoppable, but they can't get out of their own way. And that's why they're there.
Yeah. And that's a whole different subject. We can have a whole podcast on that alone. I mean,
next time.
Really, yeah, for sure. It really is. And I just don't, I don't know. I just don't see a direction that ends well for everyone, whether it be the employees, the incarcerated. I just don't see it. It's becoming overburdened with so much of what you talked about. But these conditions, and some of the feedback that we got from the last episode that people wanted to reach out is especially hitting hard. The worst I've ever seen it as far as home life. Obviously, even the department recognizes that there is no work-home life balance. There just isn't. I mean, you're constantly stuck at work. You're married to the job. Doesn't matter if you're the husband or the wife. Somebody else is raising the children at home. You're not there. You're missing important events. I mean, how does that? And we talked about a little bit about that on last episode, but really, how does that affect a person? And we've seen people, I know that, we exchanged some emails with some people, some folks that gave us back that they're going through, they think they're headed for divorce. They're trying to stop it, but they're headed for divorce.
In my research, correction officers have a 47% divorce rate. 47%. So that means that for 100 people that are married, 47 of them will end up getting divorced, potentially. Hopefully not, but potentially.
Right.
Because the symptoms of the stress from work sometimes come home. So like other symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder that people don't necessarily know because they think it's like hypervigilance and nightmares and whatever the case may be. Losing your temper over little things, not feeling happy or looking forward to things, feeling detached from others, not being able to handle other people's emotions. You get mad at like the most mundane, stupid things. And so then in order to cope with not feeling good, people start using substances, people start engaging in really self-destructive behaviors. There's a lot of overwhelming guilt and shame. And then that comes home. So home is not always a predictable place. Home is less predictable than work. And if that, I'll elaborate on that. So basically, when you go in every day and the gate closes behind you, something's going to happen. If it's an easy day, if it's a quiet day, nowadays it's not, because I look at your feed with all the incidences that are happening, and I talk to friends of mine that are still working. It's predictable. Something terrible is potentially going to happen, and you're kind of in that hyper-vigilant, like ready to go mode, which means that you're all the way up here, right? You're on, you're doing what you got to do. And then when you come home, because you've used so much mental and physical energy, you crash out. You're tired. You're grumpy. your kid has an issue, your wife is nagging you, there's a family illness, right? All of that stuff goes on. When you're at work, you know what to expect, and home is unpredictable. And you can't always bring that command presence home. Because when you're an officer, you know you're in charge. You're the person who's like calling the shots and making the decisions. And when you come home, that doesn't always translate well. So a lot of times too, in addition to partners being away all the time, missing out on children's milestones, there's resentment for that as well. Because I think about the fact, like, if you sign your kid up for something and then you keep getting mandated, you don't get to see your kid do the thing. And then that weakens the bond that you have with your child. Not being able to put your kids to bed, not being there for those events. And then the constant flipping off and on of this emotional, like, I can do this, can be extremely emotionally draining. And it leads to you feeling alienated and disconnected from other people and detached. So like things that used to make you feel good, you don't feel good anymore, right? That's called anhedonia. And that's something that a lot of people experience when they're depressed, right? Watching your kids do something, spending time with your spouse. And then on top of that, it can feel really hard to talk about what you're experiencing at work. You don't want to seem weak, or you don't want to burden your spouse or the people in your life with some of the stuff that you're seeing. Because again, like we talked about, some of it's pretty fucking horrifying. Right. I use an example of like one of the incidents I was involved in where an inmate had brought down an entire bottle of his own stuff and threw it on another guy while I was running group. And
that's special.
Yeah. No, it was this. I'll never forget that smell. Right. And I also, not to take anything away, I also have symptoms of PTSD from working in that environment. When I go to a restaurant, I sit with my back to the booth. I need to see the door. I need to see the windows, looking over my shoulder all the time, always looking for the exits. Those are things that I learned from the officers that I worked with on how to be safe, but then it doesn't go away. And if I'm not in that seat, I get freaked out. I'm like, nope, we got to move seats. We got to do some mommy needs to sit in the aisle of the show so I can run out if something happens. That shouldn't happen. That shouldn't happen. So being able to talk about those things. And so I remember like talking to my husband about it. And he was like, what? Or talking to friends about what had happened. And they're like, I don't know how you do it. I was like, I don't know. And then it was kind of after that, a couple months later, that I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. But those kinds of things that you're subjected to. What?
I said, who could blame you? But your husband couldn't have been.
Yeah.
I mean, at least it wasn't, at least his whole bottle of whatever you want to call it, wasn't thrown on you.
It was,
and why did he throw it on the other? Why did he throw it on the other guy? Just out of curiosity.
Don't know. But the really messed up part was that this was a group where they were in their restart chairs and in the therapeutic cubes. And I had walked around the group showing them, we were playing a game. Like I had shown them cards and a blessing from God. I don't know. But like, it wasn't meant for me. Like that, none of it was going to get on me. Like I knew that, after the fact, but like, he brought it down. And somehow, because again, with the pack frisking thing, officers have to do the sides and they do the wand. And that is what is expected, because if you do anything more, the inmate's going to say, Priya, he touched my penis, whatever. And like, that's exactly where the guy was hiding it. So the officers did everything that they were supposed to do to bring them down to group. But this fella thought it would be a great idea. And I like remember turning around. I didn't even do like a full turn. I was turning around. I saw the stuff on the floor and I was like, who brought brown glitter to group? And then I'm like, oh, that's not glitter.
Right.
That's not glitter. So I go, oh, 1 second. And then I just kind of walk out and I say to the officer, he's shitting him down. And I like run into my office and start like freaking out. But like,
what did the inmate do that got hit with it though?
He was sitting there and had no idea, because he was wearing a little skull cap. He was wearing a little beanie cap thing. Had no idea. Nobody even knew what had happened. And I think that like, not to say that I'm fantastic, but like, because I didn't make a big scene and didn't like start screaming or crying or freaking out until I got my office, that it was able to be handled a little bit better than it would have been if I started losing my shit, because the guy had no idea. And then once he knew, they got him out as soon as possible to get him a shower and help him to, the officers like took him out first, but it was all over him. It was all over him. And then the guy had actually, where the whiteboard where I was, he had like hit it one time and it like splattered on the whiteboard. So when I went in to get my coffee cup, like it was there. It was there. But how do you explain that to like somebody who doesn't know that? Like, how do you like, oh, how was work today? Well, somebody threw their own shit on somebody else's head because maybe somebody paid him or maybe he pissed off somebody. I don't know.
Yeah, well, the public doesn't believe it. There is one, almost to your point, there is one video that's out there from Docs. I don't know how it was released, but there is with the guy that, shit his pants. He came to group ready. Obviously, you could tell that, where it was at or what part of the facility that it was at, where he actually came armed and went in the back of his and decided to throw some shit sandwiches. So, but like when people see the video, they see, visual is everything. It's like you saying it is one thing, but when they're like, that really happens. It's like
all the time.
Yeah, it's not an everyday occurrence, luckily, but it happens more times than we'd like to admit, and just even one time is one too many.
It's vile.
Yeah.
It's chemical warfare of the worst kind, Vinny. We don't like
that.
Well,
that's a whole different set of circumstances.
But then they don't get in trouble. Like they don't like. So this person in particular ended up saying he was suicidal. And then spent the rest of his sanction time in the observatory mental health thing because like he wasn't. And I'm like,
and that's
okay. Yeah.
And that brings up another good issue is because what's going on. I know that there's, Mohawk just introduced another, almost a pizza party for inmates. I know that, Greenhaven has a carry-on of Chicago Beyond, where they're taking all the gang leaders, putting them on a unit, giving them a refrigerator and all kinds of special, basically rewarding all the bad actors, putting them in one place, making it an honor dorm, and giving them all these extra things where they can go and do their own rounds, which is ludicrous to me. But having read the recent policy on it, I was shocked. I'm not a big believer in some of these things. Not that there's Chicago Beyond is a different thing. Those with the Marshall Project, I will never agree with anything that has to do with the Marshall Project. The Marshall Project is totally unfair against officers. They never cover anything on the officer side, and majority of what they put are from lawsuits that have not even yet to be proven yet. But that's a different story. But the point that I'm trying to make is there's all these special things that they're doing to try to bring down inmate violence, whether it be these pizza parties, whether it be these honor dorms or what have you. And since nothing else is working, I guess that you're willing to try anything, and maybe and hopefully some of it will work. I'm not a big believer that it will, but when the officers see that all these benefits that are happening, and they're the ones that have to administer these pizza parties or these parties or the honor dorm, and they're stuck at work. Like, we just had an incident that happened at one of the facilities I won't mention for security concerns, where they were short-staffed and they had, they said they weren't going to do it again, but emergency situations, and they got stuck there for 24 hours. So how do you tell an officer that they can't go home, but yet they have to administer and give out the honor dorm or give out these pizza parties or ordering out from a special place, like is the new policy at Mohawk? And then they have these, with their pilot programs where the officers, they're going to be suicide watch, but the inmates are going to be watching other inmates on suicide watch. I mean, it's some of these things that are just ludicrous and nobody believes it, but these are actually policies that are put in place, and there's pilot programs that are out there. I don't know if it's actually been instituted yet, but I know the inmates were training on hospice at Fishkill and a couple other facilities. I think the pilot program was at 5 Points, Fishkill. I can't remember. Was it Greenhaven? I don't remember. But I know the Chicago Beyond is another pilot program at Greenhaven, and doing these crazy things. Like I said, whether it works to bring down the violence, we'll see. But every day you see that the inmates' violence is escalating. It's not de-escalating. So I'm not a big firm believer in that. But again, how do you deal with that as an employee when you're mandated for 23, 24 hours, and then next thing you know, you're giving out subs and pizza to and chicken wings to inmates, and you're watching that, and you're like, right now it's my son, daughter's, wife's, grandmother, whatever birthday, and I'm
Yeah.
missing that because I'm forced to be here. I don't want to be here. I'm forced to be here. So that has to be a special kind of coping skill that I wouldn't be able to deal with.
It's all of that aside, right? Incentivization can be a positive reinforcement tool, sure, fine. But if I'm locked in for X amount of time without contact to my family or some sense of normalcy, and I touched upon this last time, and the inmates can talk on the tablets to their family at any given time and whatever the case would be. I think that to me would be more unfair than like whatever they have to do. And that's a personal thing, right? Because I had to hand out popcorn and cookies to people. So like, I'm with you in solidarity, like snack is not where it's at, but right. Like that to me, like, and again, right, with that incident that happened, I was able to get an outside line very quickly and talk with my husband. So I was like, okay, listen, everything's okay. This just happened. But it was like a normal person that I could connect with, as opposed to, you know, that is also like inmates watching other inmates on suicide watch. Like, okay, so let's say I don't like the other person. We have a long-standing issue from maybe a previous facility. They could let somebody kill themselves and they're not going to be held culpable for that. Like that's horseshit. Sorry, that's horseshit. That's really, really poor practice, because an inmate, if they truly are suicidal or struggling with mental health concerns, like legitimately, not the ones who scream suicide so that they can get what they want. If somebody really is in that kind of a level of darkness, having another incarcerated person watch them, where are the ethics? Where's Doc's legal team telling them that that's a really fucking horrible idea? Like I have really big feelings, Vinny. Like this is not okay.
Well, it's not okay, and I believe that it's a pilot program. It's in writing. I know. I do not know. I'm not going to sit there and say that it's been instituted. I do know that there's been training and hospice training for the inmate. But even if an inmate's trained in it, they're not clinical. They're not nursing staff. So I don't know what you're training them in. I believe the way that New York State statute is written, that not only, I didn't think of it, what you just said, unethical. I'll have to look into that. I do believe that it's illegal. I do not believe that those positions can be given to inmates. Basically, you're having inmates do, whether it be civilian or security staff, you're basically having them do work that they're not authorized to do. So I think, like you said, legalities of it, but like anything New York does, they don't care about the legalities, because it's like, until you can sue me and spend money in the state, and the state has, unlimited resources because they're able to tax and gouge the taxpayer, but they have unlimited resources. So, by the time that court case is fought and won is years down the road, and the damage is already done. I hope it doesn't come to fruition.
Yeah.
But just using that as an example, that the conditions aren't good. They're not good for the staff. They're not good for, like I said, civilian staff, not good for security, and it's definitely not good for the incarcerated either.
No, I was just thinking like 8 different directions on that one. Like the headline, like what would Julia and Aunt Kathy say about that? Like, oh, it was the officer's fault. If it's the inmate that is doing this role, and again, hypothetical, right? Like you could just see how it would get turned on officers so quickly. And the other thing that I was thinking too is like when I worked at Hale Creek, we had a therapeutic community where the inmates had hierarchy. So like we had like the senior leader or the community leader, right? They were policing themselves in that, but these were also higher functioning guys that were getting ready for work release. These were guys with little to no mental health issues, non-violent offenders. Like these were just kind of like drug dealer guys that took the KSAT program. So like that works, right? I've seen that work, and I've seen that be very effective to some capacity, but having inmates responsible for other things, and also like the gang leader honor dorm, New York State Department of Corrections doesn't have gangs, Vinny. There's no gangs there.
Right. They don't recognize gangs. You're 100% right. But every training that I went through, it's whether it's CIU or gang related training, they seem to recognize it, but they don't recognize it to the average person or to the public. It's very interesting that you said that.
There's no, that's not.
And that's, like I said, that's something that came out of a special program. I had a look up the name of it through my notes. I wasn't prepared to talk about that specifically.
Sorry.
But as always, we seem to get sidetracked and come up with some unique stories. So it's I love it. I actually love it. But yeah, I've learned a lot through your stats. Between the divorce rate, the life expectancy. It's like but one of the things that you had mentioned, and I think it's important to really hit on, is when you talk about the work-life balance, and I can't repeat this enough. There is no work-life balance in docs. You're almost an indentured servant to docs with no care. Though the commissioner says it all the time, he calls balls and strike transparency, and he cares so much for family. Kathy Hochul says how she cares about family, but everything their actions do prove otherwise. It's disgusting. It has to end, and I don't see any end in sight. I only see it with these bills that are being passed. It's getting worse, but be that as it may, you always said that everybody, including me, my first time on a job was kid, whatever problems that you got, when you go home, leave it at the gate. Does that really work?
I don't think so. I actually, when I treat correction officer clients, and we talk about the fact that like some of the adaptations that you have from post-traumatic stress disorder, hypervigilance being one of them, like being able to see out of the corner of, being able to size up somebody, right? Those are things that are great. That's cool. Those kinds of skills don't always translate to home life, but to say to somebody very simply, leave it at the gate, it's a bad thing to say to somebody, and it's really oversimplifying it, because a lot of correction officers and first responders in general, the job becomes a lot of your identity. Like it really does. And you just can't turn it off. And so like for me, when I'm working with clients, especially, it's about learning how to control first of all, it's identifying your emotions. Besides, I'm pissed off, I'm stressed out, and I'm numb, right? When I have my correction officers come in and they're talking like that, I'm like, okay, but like, what do you think about that? And then we're able to say, okay, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling resentful, whatever. Learning to control your emotions without suppressing them, because holding it in and thinking you can handle it all will eat away at your mind, your body, and your soul. And that's where the alcoholism, the infidelity, the overspending, right? All of those things that people do to cope as maladaptive coping strategies, to self-soothe and to regulate your emotional state. You got to learn how to control it. You got to learn how to talk about it with the right people, because you're not going to get vacation time, because you're not. I don't know if anybody is able to swap yet or what's going on. I know that there's a lot of places with like trooper schedules, but like
some facilities, yes, some no.
Yeah. So like your ability to like plan for things, vacation time, like you're not going to be getting that. So you have to do, if you're staying in, you have to do what's best for your mental health, which is to talk about it. And it's not weak. If you find somebody that you can actually talk about, whether it's a peer, whether it's the EAP person, family, you don't have to give everybody the gory details about what you're seeing, like what I just shared, but like you could talk about like, today was a stressful day at work. Something else that I talk about with my clients in particular is if they had a really hard day at work, like it was really, really bad, it was really, really nasty, they have like a safe word when they're calling home or texting home. Today was a potato day, today was a pineapple day, so that the spouse or the other person is ready to, help them, like, okay, let's get you dinner, let's, get you to bed, I'll take care of this, that, and the other thing. Because I think a lot of the spouses, wives and husbands, because I know that they're really holding down the fort for their officers, which is wonderful. But then when the person comes home and they're grumpy and they don't want to talk about things, if you know that you had a really shitty shift and you don't want to talk about it, being able to relate that to your partner instead of like being dismissive and avoidant can help to make the relationship feel a little bit more like we're on the same team is how I would phrase it. So like, oh, today's potato day. All right. He had a really hard day at work. I'll make sure that, I have a beer cracked open for him and some potato chips, and I'll let him sit in his chair and I'll put the kids to bed. That could make a world of difference, as opposed to somebody coming home and instantly being hit with all the stuff that they've missed because they're working.
Right.
Like, oh, you missed Johnny's this is what happened. This is what happened. And the person's like, I am overstimulated. When I worked at Washington and when I worked at Great Meadow, I had like an hour and a half commute. I would listen to music to zone out because I was going from toddlers to inmates and inmates to toddlers, and now school age kids. But like I needed that decompression time to be able to be normal when I got home, and then also to like hype myself up when I went in. That's a coping skill that helps. So anything that you can do to help you to kind of bring yourself down a couple notches can also be make a world of difference, especially in the conditions that you have where you're not getting time off. Doing your best to get sleep, exercising if you can, proper nutrition, stay away from the energy drinks, stay away. Those things are terrible.
Some people live on those though.
I know. Energy drinks and Zyn pouches. I mean, I use Zyn, so I shouldn't talk, but still, like, the idea of like you have to be, making sure that you're eating healthy. Because again, if you're getting stuck, you're going to eat vending machine food or takeout. You're not getting healthy food. Healthy food helps your brain work.
Unless you're on one of the honor dorms or the pizza parties, maybe you can order out with the inmates.
You can have Caesar salad and sparkling water.
Some Saratoga, I could go for that. So
that's
one of the things before we wrap it up, and we got a little less than 9 minutes. So one of the things that I had from the last year's from the law enforcement thing, we just put it at the bottom. So we had, this is only for obviously Western New York, though they do work out to the whole step. So I want to make sure that people have the helpline for that, the Western New York Law Enforcement Helpline.org. For those that are not on the video version of the podcast, you can go to them, resources. They're training right now for peer groups and what have you. So I use them as one of my resources because obviously it was for the Western New York area. Still in contact with them, and they have some great material and are always available for a phone call, just as we are. So what would be some of the resources that you would recommend to, whether it be the employee or their family?
EAP is there to help. It's one of those things that I know, like even with like this new mental health hub thing, it can be a little bit rocky, but like EAP is there to help. Like they have training to be able to do these kinds of things to get you in the right direction. But EAP is not therapy. EAP is not going to be a long-term thing. They are really there to help support you in the crisis and refer you to the right place. I know that in our area, there's the New York State, it's NYLEAP, it's New York Law Enforcement. New York Cares Up is another thing. A lot of agencies use the Cares Up model, which really prioritizes mental health. I was just at a conference in October for suicide prevention for first responders. And the Cares Up model is really great because they have that kind of stuff. I don't know if DOCCS is involved with them, but they really should be if you're paying attention. Albany.
They are.
Hi. Outpatient therapy can be helpful. I was talking with you earlier about the fact that like New York State Health Insurance Plan has a behavioral health agency or insurance company that a lot of therapists don't accept because the reimbursement rate is shit. So what the state can do if they really want to is pick another one that will provide their members with actual insurance with reimbursable rates that therapists are willing to take. Because I know like a really good friend of mine, she's the EAP coordinator, and she's saying like, if she can find someone who does take the state insurance, there's a wait list to get in. So I think if DOCCS and New York State in general, this is more of a New York State thing too, actually had a behavioral health plan that paid fairly, I think you would have a lot more therapists out there. And then also like you want to find a therapist who you can trust, who's culturally competent. I lucked out that I spent a couple years in prison. So a lot of my clients don't have to explain the job to me. I already know. But there are plenty of other really strong people out there that know their shit. You just got to find them. There's also a lot of inpatient programs. There's the Recovery Centers of America for like substance abuse rehab. And there's a program, I think it's out in Sedona, Arizona. It's a first responder mental health program, inpatient. So there are things that are out there that are specialized. And I think those kinds of programs can be particularly helpful because you're with other people in this same journey that are going to understand you. But like peer relationship and peer support is not the same thing as therapy. So it's helpful for the therapist to know or to have an understanding of what you're experiencing, but it's not mandatory for good treatment. And I think that's a common misconception in this population period, is like, well, they don't know what it's like. Well, they don't necessarily have to know what it's like. They know what it's like to live a healthier life, and they can help you do that if you find the right person. So those are just some ideas that I had kind of looked into in support of this talk today.
And would that also include family members, that not necessarily the employee? Would that, like, spouses and what have you, or even children for that matter? Because after the last episode, we got a lot of feedback, and people were saying that, I'm the wife or I'm the husband of the employee, what is there, what can I do, or who can I talk to? Would they be covered under those programs as well?
They do. They have, I know EAP can help families, like, period. I'm pretty sure NYLEAP would as well. I'm sure if somebody talked to them, but I think too, I know maybe it's NYLEAP, but they have a, like, spouses support group, critical incident something. If your first responder has seen something, they have, like, a support group. I'm not 100% certain.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm not 100% certain. But the idea that, like, those resources are out there, or for the spouse to get their own therapist in order to kind of support what's going on, because that can be helpful too. It's not just the first responder that might need treatment. It might be even couples therapy. Like, we have couples, like, if somebody's in that world, then it's helping them to understand what the person's going through in ways that they can support them. But also, like, the spouses are going through stuff too. Like, let's not forget them.
Well, I think that's the part that's overlooked. We could all say that the first responder themselves are going through something with everything that you covered today, but also people forget about the family member at home that's also suffering in crisis, because whether it be family mode, they're always burdened with the task of raising the children or getting them on the school bus or what have you. It doesn't even have to be child related, but they're having a crisis at home because of the working conditions that the other half is suffering at the facility. And that gets overlooked too. Besides, like I just reiterated earlier, they're waiting for that phone call that, hey, is something going to happen to my loved one?
Oh, with the exposures. Yeah, absolutely. Just that alone is terrifying.
Yeah, that is just, to me, is just, and I got my special sticker in the mail. So I got my holiday gift. So I got my, I'll let people interpret those initials and the lettering for what they will. So I got my holiday treat. Not very professional of me, but I did want to say thank you for my holiday gift that I got in the mail. And so a special thank you for that. So in ending, I'll just kind of let you wrap it up. That what do you want the listeners and the people that are listening to this podcast and correlate with everything that you just said? How would you wrap it up today, and what's your final message for those listeners?
Bottom line is that help is out there. If you are noticing that you're struggling, or even if you don't think you're struggling, people are probably seeing you struggle. So it's important for, regardless of where you're at, to be your brother or sister's keeper. If you notice that somebody seems off, if you notice that somebody is struggling, there's absolutely no harm in talking to that person. And people should be receptive to that feedback. If somebody's like, hey man, are you okay? Like, what's going on? To utilize the resources that are out there, whether it's EAP, CISM, right? I wish I was more optimistic about this mental health wellness coordinator hub thing. I don't think it's going to fly. I think it was kind of slapped together real quick. So we'll see. But that could also be another resource if these people are, really in it to win it. Taking care of yourself, making sure that you're doing the basic things to make sure that you're healthy. And also, like, using your time off wisely. So when you do have an RDO, take care of yourself, rest, do the things that you need to do, be gentle with yourself. I think a lot of times too, firsties think that, like, self-care is selfish. It's really not. So, like, if you want to go hunting, if you want to go to the gym, doing those kinds of things to de-stress, helpful. Spending time with your friends, helpful. Doing things that normal people do on their days off instead of isolating at home or, just being miserable, because there is help that's out there, I guess is the best thing, is, like, don't be afraid to face your demons. It's harder to do that than it is to hide from them.
And we're always here. If anybody has any questions, please reach out to us. We have the contact information that's out with every episode, and we'll put you in touch. And I can also get you in touch with Jillian for those that last time if they need to, correct?
Absolutely. If you are the gatekeeper for my contact information, you can vet people, make sure they're legit. But I'm always happy to answer emails when I'm in between clients, or if I'm off hours, I'm more than happy to respond to an email. That's something that I want to be really, really clear about, is that I'm also here to help support people in whatever capacity I can.
Great. And as always, thank you for coming on, giving us your valuable time. So I know that the listeners appreciate it. I certainly appreciate you. So it means a lot to hear from someone that's actually can help, and someone that's actually experienced a lot of things that we talked about. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Let's give the applause out there. And again, for those people that are on the different podcasts, always like and subscribe so we can get your feedback. So we just started on the different platforms. We're also now on TikTok, which we just recently did. That was not something that I've participated in before, but there's a lot of information that's out on TikTok as well. So again, Jillian, thank you. So as always, when we close every podcast, remember to be kind, because you never know what the person next to you is going through. So thank you again. And I'm sure we'll have you on again. So, and everyone, thank you for another episode of the Working in Hell podcast. Thank you.
Awesome.
You've been listening to the Working in Hell podcast with Vinny Blasio. Find this podcast on any of your favorite platforms like Audible, iHeart, and Spotify. And be sure to check out www.workinginhell.com for more information and important links. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.